highest state is signified by that identity with Shiva, who enacts all roles, absolutely all of them. And that in itself is also a Samavesha. This is an act of being repossessed by awareness. Awareness takes over. If we are to speak of individual awareness, we speak of it only in terms of individual point of view. Individual awareness here represents universal point of view funneled to extreme point where it affords that possibility. So this is why this creation and experience of being individual is heralded as so precious, exquisite, extraordinary, because it's a byproduct and a result of an extraordinary, it's a work of art. Many, many glazings, many, many layers, many, many filters applied so as to give this perfect, absolutely exquisite representation of reality where one can enjoy and savor this, as it were, individually. And yet, only the one who savors that individuality never forgoes any fragmentation. This is the paradox. Therefore, just recently in Germany, we made an attempt to reevaluate by challenging a certain beginning to crystallize, if not crystallized, perspective on identity, where the culprit of calamity, that is ignorance, is seen in identifying with the body, is being called a bluff, because identity, it's all property of Shiva. There is no such thing as individual identity. That is a misnomer. This is why we keep going back to that very same line. The Shaivite perspective. First step equals to last step. The first step equals to last step. And that, what we call identity here, is never in relation to individual. Individual cannot disidentify with that what is the will of Shiva to conceal itself in individual existence. So therefore, the inquiry here and the insight into this relationship has to be turned completely upside down, and that is Samavesha. That is what Abhinavagupta suggested here, for which he received a lot of criticism, particularly from the Shaiva Siddhanta circles dominating Indian scene at the time. That it's outrageous how Samavesha can be brought into the high of spiritual methodology if Samavesha is so rooted in this ancient and associated with possessions by spirits. But Abhinavagupta's suggestion was, it is that exactly what is taking place. It's by virtue of possession and repossession. So this monistic perspective, that switch, that flip that's taking place. So identity is a chief property of awareness. Whatever awareness identifies with, it becomes. Whatever identity there is, because there is an act on the part of Shiva to transfigure itself into whatever it identified itself in the first place as a mean. So, disidentifying from the body, mind, and so forth is not necessary. All is required instead is to understand and verify this understanding through direct insights, through Samavesha. That one's body is already divine, just as the entire creation, manifestation is divine on the account of its being body of God. And the dependent origination here arising at the very same time. Let us take a pause for a moment. Those of you who have taken Kundalini course might remember at the earlier modules when the philosophical perspective is given on the three Kundalinis. Who remembers that? Who remembers that? Just give me some encouragement, yeah? Thank you. Para Kundalini, Chit Kundalini, and Prana Kundalini. And remember the dynamic there? Remember the relationship? Para Kundalini is that what is beyond experience. Para Kundalini is that Shiva Shakti in that embrace where there is absolutely everything is absolved by that embrace. So Para Kundalini is beyond manifestation. And at the level of Chit Kundalini, sometimes Shakti Kundalini. Chit Kundalini or Shakti Kundalini, there is this prong, this fork is created. Because there is this tremor, this frequency. There's something. There's some propensity. If we are to film this, if we are to make it into a visual metaphor, if we are to give it to a silk screen as an art project, it's as if momentarily Shakti, in the embrace with Shiva, slightly opens her eyes, ever so slightly. She's still in that amorous, ecstatic embrace, but ever so slightly. And as she opens her eyes, there is something she begins to perceive. It's not yet concrete. If there is enough curiosity in that perception of what caught her corner of her eye, instantaneously tremendous force is created, and that force is cascading down as manifestation, and that is from there on called Prana Kundalini. So everything, absolutely every big or little thin thing is then the expression of Prana Kundalini. Prana, active agency of consciousness. So this, and we spoke about Kundalini, Para, Chit, and Prana Kundalini. No one experiences Para Kundalini. It exists as a symbol, as the highest, loftiest concept. Because it's beyond manifestation. It's beyond psychic categories. It's beyond anything. And some of you recall maybe, rare few have glimpses or direct experiences of Chit Kundalini. These are Mahatmas, these are rare beings. Siddhas, seers. And the rest of creation is Prana Kundalini. All the symptomatology that is experienced in association to the process is only with regard to Prana Kundalini. And of course, Tantra has a whole body of work with regard to that, which the course deals with, and now we are transforming this into a book. But this to give this, simply as a reminder, that's to supplement what we have spoken just now, that dependent origination. So it is at the level of Chit Kundalini where the propensity for manifestation, propensity for anything taking place, if that propensity is not strong enough, then Shakti will merge back into Shiva. So if that slightly slanted eye was not at all driven by curiosity enough, it will fall back into that ecstatic embrace, and there's nothing. But whatever there, as it were, again, extending that cinematic visual metaphor, suddenly tickles the fancy. Some curiosity, something. What is that? What is that? And the eyes are open, and immediately the whole entire manifestation cascading down through all the tattvic creation, because this is in accord with Tantrism, is carried by powers, forces. All the forces, all the tattvas are respective Shaktis, right? All the tattvas are respective Shaktis, and then we begin to Shiva, Shakti, right? Awareness, bliss, will, knowledge, action. 5 pure categories, right? Awareness, bliss, will, knowledge, action. Awareness, bliss, will, knowledge, action. This is always intact. Always. Shiva, Shakti, Sadashiva, Ishvara, Shuddha Vidya. All 5. 5 pure categories. So this, what we call manifestation, manifest reality, of course, many points of view can be taken. But that who has created whom? Chicken and egg story. What came first? What gives rise to what? See? So 30 years on, this response of Maharishi is like koan. God has created man, human. Who has created God? Ouroboros, I Ching. Extend the metaphors, extend the symbols. Dependent origination. Rising simultaneously. Do not exist one without the other. This is what brings sacredness into the world. Without religious doctrine. It brings sacredness where it belongs, without having to resort to the religious perspective, which one way or another always separates. It creates subtle separation. Subtle separation. And that subtle separation begins to erode the mind, erode everything. Because if you have this high reality, if you have this heaven, and then this earth then become closer to hell, or purgatory, or what have you. So instead, as Kularnava Tantra says, whatever can be found in the outer universe can be found in this body. Hence the walking universe. So this is at least the metaphysical perspective that Trika Shaivism is known for. And of course there are intricacies and varieties that are different, the direct path exemplified by Pratyabhijna Hridayam as a progressive, gradual, exemplified by Krama. There is something else altogether, as you know, Spanda, the doctrine of vibration. But that relationship of subject and object here, which is propelled by the means of knowledge, Shakti herself, is what keeps that dynamic. So this already could potentially answer that what has been brought out in relation to Shivahood. It's to contemplate from that place, the Shambhavopaya, the highest mean. The reason why it carries that name, carries that term, the means of Shiva awareness, because it works from the level of will. Just as in that equilateral, in that triangle, will, knowledge, action. Aham, the supreme mantra, Aham, I am. So the highest means here represented by one's own will, that will. And the understanding here already, one has to be rooted in the understanding that all there is Shiva, all there is awareness. That there's no such thing as individual, even if one experiences this. And this is what the contemplation is to obliterate any trace of difference between individual experience and universal experience, which at first available only in or through insights gained through transcendence in samadhi. But once the water reaches its level, it literally equalizes. And from there on, it's therefore referred to as natural state. Natural state. That natural state is Sahaj Samadhi. So it's eyes open, eyes closed. There's nothing to transcend, because transcendence and eminence no longer stand in opposition to each other. They are one, they are expression of one and the other. Maharishi beautifully spoke about it in terms of extending that analogy of pouring oil from one container to another, from one vessel to another, from one, let's say, bottle to another. So the silent sphere becomes more dynamic, and the dynamic becomes more silent. So the dynamism is infused with silence, and silence is infused with dynamism. If prior to that they stood in opposition to each other, silence was experienced for the value of silence only, and dynamism was experienced for the value of what it represents in terms of its dynamic qualities. And therefore they necessarily stood in opposition to each other, and that's how they are experienced. But with a repeated pouring of one into another, it, as it were, infuses these otherwise opposing qualities with that what makes them into what has been just spoken in terms of as silence becomes enlivened and dynamism is pacified, equilibrated. So even amidst the most chaotic events in life, we find ourselves anchored or steeped in silence. Likewise, stillness is not experienced as inertia, as placidity. It is vibrant, ecstatic, filled with bliss. You see? So that's what natural state is. And that contemplation, that's what Shambhavi here represents, the Shambhavopaya represents, the highest means. It's a continued contemplation. Continued contemplation. When at some point we don't know when contemplation ended, whether it became automatic, and that naturalness of that state is so subtle, then there is no witness left to report otherwise. It is spoken clinically as witnessing goes. It is beyond witness. Obviously, when that happens, it's like what we yesterday referred to in a playful way when we spoke about grace. When sun is shining, we don't walk around and sun is shining, sun is shining. Yes, our little 4.5-year-old sometimes comes out and says, "What a sunny day today." But she doesn't say it 50 times. She says it once. Maybe she goes to the kitchen and tells her brother, "Keanu, it's a sunny day today." And of course, he's a teenager already. What are you talking about? So this is not, requires a confirmation or a rainy day. It's natural. In the same way, one does not know when one slips into complete unity. How can one know when one is in unity? Subject and object is appeased. How can you know? You can only know when you step out of unity. You see? So the reference point is created. We're not talking about depersonalization, lost in Gaga land. This is not unity. Or mood making, and, like sort of like neuroplasticity of the brain today, and with all our understanding, it's so easy, right? And method acting. We should speak about that as well at some point, right? Method acting. I like that metaphor. We brought it a couple of years ago. There's only one direct and one true actor here, but of course we all are acting our role. And it's performed authentically. That's all there is. And that's where we touch upon that, what Michael suggested, Shantarasa, that aesthetic rapture. We'll leave this for a moment, but it is related to that. How in aesthetics of Abhinavagupta, this highest state is signified by that identity with Shiva, who enacts all roles, absolutely all of them. And that in itself is also a Samavesha. This is an act of being repossessed by awareness. Awareness takes over. So, in practical terms, that is so subtle that inquiry simply gradually dissolves that dynamic and that creative tension between subject and object, when it is appeased, brings about natural state. And in that natural state, in some circles, is called Sahaj Samadhi. Among the Shaivites, it's called Samavesha. So therefore, we speak about it, Samavesha, as a movement, as an experience, and Samavesha as a state. So when Samavesha becomes a state, one's natural state, then one cannot tell what it is feels like. One would have to be taken out of that to know how it is. You see? Just a simple inference will get you this. If the movie is very good and you're enjoying the spectacle or the play or whatever, if it's really good, it should absorb all your attention and you will identify with characters, with scenery, sound, and everything that is being experienced at the expense of everything else. But if the movie is not so good, like you're going to go to the kitchen, like, shall I pose for you, darling? Don't worry. Don't pose. Carry on. I'll pick it up when I come back. You're not going to miss much. So you're not invested, you're not engaged enough. It's not dissimilar in this regard.